If you thought the NFL was all about talent, hard work, and fair shots, think again, because right now, the league's most powerful people are under fire, and the name at the center of the storm is Shedeur Sanders. This isn't just another draft debate. This is outrage. This is backlash. And this is the kind of story the league wishes would disappear. Welcome to Spill News, where secrets explode before your eyes. The internet couldn't believe it, and trust me, you won't either. One decision, one draft moment, and suddenly fans, analysts, and insiders are all asking the same uncomfortable question. Did the NFL really play this fair? Or did power, politics, and quiet bias decide a young quarterback's future behind closed doors? Screenshots started circulating. Anonymous quotes began popping up. Blogs went wild. And just like that, NFL owners, the untouchables, found themselves in the hot seat. Some fans are calling it strategy. Others are calling it sabotage. And a few are saying something darker is going on. So let me ask you this. If you were in this position, same talent, same spotlight, same pressure, and you felt the system turn against you, what would you do? Because once we break this down, yeah, it gets uglier. Before the outrage, before the hashtags, before NFL owners suddenly found themselves explaining decisions they never thought they'd have to explain. There was a buildup, quiet, calculated, almost invisible if you weren't paying attention. And at the center of it all was Shedeur Sanders, a name that should have been treated like a future franchise cornerstone, but instead became a lightning rod. For years, Shedeur's story looked almost too clean. The son of a football legend, yes, but also a quarterback who backed up on the field, calm under pressure, surgical with his throws, confident without being reckless. Analysts praised his football IQ. Teammates talked about his leadership. Coaches highlighted his preparation. On paper, this was the kind of prospect teams build entire draft board around. But somewhere along the way, the conversation shifted. It didn't happen all at once. There was no single headline screaming problem. Instead, it started with whispers, subtle comments on late-night sports shows. A line here, a pause there, analysts saying things like, he's talented, but, and then letting that but hang in the air just long enough to plant doubt. But is he coachable? But is there too much noise around him? But can teams handle the spotlight? Noise, spotlight, handle. Interesting words to use when talking about a quarterback, especially one who hadn't failed in the way they were hinting at. That's when people online started noticing something felt off. Draft season arrived, and suddenly mock drafts looked different. Names with weaker stats started creeping ahead of Shedeur. Quarterbacks with less tape, less consistency, fewer big game moments were being described as safe picks, while Shedeur was labeled complicated. And nobody could quite explain why. Then came the so-called concerns. Anonymous sources, always anonymous, started leaking opinions to blogs and insiders. Some teams aren't comfortable. Certain owners are hesitant. Front offices worry about distractions. Distraction from what exactly? His play, his preparation, or something else no one wanted to say out loud. Fans started clipping old interviews, rewatching press conferences, looking for the supposed red flags. And the more they looked, the less they found. No arrests, no locker room scandals, no on-field meltdowns, just confidence, just presence, just a quarterback who didn't shrink himself to make the league more comfortable. That's when the narrative machine kicked into high gear. Suddenly, Shedeur wasn't just a player, he was a topic. Debate shows argued about his image. Comment sections filled with coded language. Some praised his swagger, others called it arrogance. And quietly, behind closed doors, teams were adjusting their boards. According to people claiming knowledge at draft meetings, Shedeur's name sparked longer discussions than expected, not about schemes or arm strength, but about optics, market reactions, media cycles. One insider quote that went viral said, "Some owners don't want the attention that comes with him." That single line did more damage than any stat line ever could. Because what does that really mean? Attention from who? Fans? Media? Or scrutiny? As draft day crept closer, tension rose. Shedeur stayed publicly calm, smiling, focused, saying all the right things. But online, the mood shifted from excitement to suspicion. Fans weren't just rooting for him anymore. They were bracing for something unfair. Then came the meetings that nobody could see. Private workouts, closed-door interviews, reportedly polite, professional, and uneventful. Yet after each one, more reports surfaced claiming teams were undecided. Undecided about what? A quarterback who had already shown he could lead? That's when comparisons started flying. Analysts pointed out other quarterbacks, past and present, who were far Messier prospects but never faced this level of hesitation. And the question grew louder. Why him? Draft analysts tried to calm the storm. This happens every year, they said. Teams overthink. But this didn't feel like overthinking. It felt like positioning, like a coordinated softening of expectations, like the league was slowly lowering the temperature around Shedeur's name before anyone could notice the pattern. Then draft night arrived. The cameras caught everything except the truth. Shedeur waiting, smiling, hugging family, picks rolling in, names being called, some expected, some shocking. And with each selection that wasn't his, social media erupted. Fans counted, analysts stalled, commentators filled airtime with speculation. Maybe teams see something we don't. Maybe there's information we're missing. But no one ever said what that information was, because nothing concrete ever surfaced. That silence spoke volumes. As the draft unfolded, frustration turned into anger, not just at teams, but at ownership. People started connecting dots, looking at which franchises passed, who their owners were, what kind of players they historically favored, and a narrative formed that couldn't be unformed. This wasn't about football anymore. It was about control, about who gets to define acceptable, about which players are celebrated for confidence and which are punished for it. Hashtags started trending. Clips resurfaced. Old quotes were recontextualized. Fans accused the league of hypocrisy. Blogs ran headlines questioning fairness. Even former players began hinting that they'd seen this movie before. And suddenly NFL owners, usually invisible during draft celebrations, were dragged into the spotlight. Commentators questioned whether front offices were truly independent or quietly aligned with ownership preferences. Were decisions being made to win games or to avoid discomfort? The backlash didn't explode yet. It simmered, dangerous, quiet, building pressure like a sealed container on a flame. Because while teams finalized their picks and celebrated new additions, a growing section of the fan base felt something had been taken, not just from Shedeur, but from the integrity of the process itself. And just when it seemed like the story might fade into post-draft analysis, something unexpected happened. A leak, a comment, a shift that turned frustration into full-blown outrage. But what came next, even his enemies didn't expect. Because just when the league thought the noise would die down, the leaks started talking. Not official statements, not press releases, the kind of information that slips out sideways, late at night, through burner accounts, half-confirmed blog posts, and people familiar with the situation. The kind of leaks that don't scream truth, but don't disappear either. It began with a screenshot, an alleged internal message floating around NFL Twitter, claiming that one front office executive warned ownership that drafting Shedeur Sanders would bring unwanted media dynamics. That phrase lit the internet on fire. Media dynamics, not playbook fit, not arm strength, not injuries. Media dynamics. Fans read between the lines immediately. Blogs started connecting dots, suggesting that some owners were nervous about losing narrative control. According to anonymous insiders, certain teams feared that drafting Shedeur wouldn't just bring a quarterback. It would bring cameras, commentary comparisons, and constant questions. And for franchises used to operating quietly, that attention felt like a threat. Then another leak surfaced, this one claiming that a private owners meeting before the draft included concerns about brand alignment. Brand alignment. Suddenly the language sounded less like football and more like corporate risk management. And that's when sarcasm kicked in online. Yeah, because nothing screams winning football like avoiding confidence. One viral tweet read. Another joked, they don't want a QB, they want a mute button. As these so-called leaks spread, the league stayed silent. No denials, no clarifications, just carefully worded statements about trusting the process. And in that silence, outrage grew louder. Sports talk shows jumped on it. Hosts pretended to ask neutral questions while clearly choosing sides. One segment asked, "When does fit become code?" Another panel debated whether owners were still shaping decisions behind the scenes more than anyone wanted to admit. And then came the name drops. Former players, retired, respected, and suddenly very vocal, hinted they'd seen similar situations during their careers. One claimed, "I watched teams pass on talent because it made certain people uncomfortable." He never said Shedeur's name. He didn't have to. Meanwhile, fans noticed something else. Quarterbacks with documented off-field drama, public controversies, and actual locker room issues were still being defended as passionate or competitive. But Shedeur, he was being dissected for tone, for posture, for confidence. That double standard became impossible to ignore. Then came the fake investigative reports, slickly written blog posts citing league insiders who claimed some owners worried about how Shedeur's presence could shift power dynamics inside organizations. Translation? A quarterback who knew his worth might not play the silent role some franchises preferred. And that's when the jokes turned dark. Because nothing scares ownership like a player who knows his value. Talent is fine, independence is a problem. The outrage spilled beyond football circles. Culture commentators chimed in. YouTubers broke down body language clips. TikTok creators stitched draft footage with commentary, accusing the league of gatekeeping. Even people who didn't follow football started asking why this felt so familiar. The NFL tried to move on, announced schedules, posted highlight reels, distracted fans with fresh storylines. But the damage was done. Because once a draft decision feels political, you can't just rewind the tape. Then another twist hit. A rumored leaked call summary, allegedly between a front office and an ownership representative, claimed that passing on Shedeur was described as the safer option. Safer. That single word ignited a second wave of backlash. Safer for who? The team? Or the people signing the checks? Fans flooded comment sections demanding transparency. Analysts who initially defended teams began backtracking. One admitted on air, "I'm not saying it intentional, but the optics are bad." Bad optics in a league built on optics? That landed hard. And just like that, NFL owners weren't background figures anymore. They were characters in the story. People started listing franchises with historically tight owner control, revisiting past draft controversies, looking at patterns. Who gets labeled leader versus who gets labeled problem. The narrative shifted from Shedeur alone to something bigger, a system that rewards silence and punishes individuality. Then came the sarcasm wave. Memes mocked owners clutching briefcases labeled culture. Videos joked about draft rooms allergic to confidence. One viral clip showed a mock draft board where the best players slid down simply because they asked questions. The league still didn't respond directly, and that silence only confirmed what many already believed. The backlash wasn't imagined. By now, the story wasn't about where Shedeur landed. It was about why he slid, about what that said regarding power, control, and the unwritten rules players are expected to follow. And just when the outrage seemed to reach its peak, another name surfaced. A respected executive. Quiet. Influential. Someone whose opinion carried weight across multiple franchises. According to a late-night report, this individual had allegedly advised several teams to avoid unnecessary narratives in the draft. Again, narratives, not football. That revelation cracked the story wide open, because now it wasn't just owners reacting independently. It looked coordinated, or at least influenced. And once coordination enters a conversation, trust disappears fast. Fans began demanding accountability. Commentators started asking whether the draft process was truly merit-based anymore. Even defenders of the league admitted, this looks bad. And just when everyone thought the worst had already surfaced, another leak dropped, one that shifted the story from outrage to something far more personal. But just when we thought it was over, another name came up. This time, it wasn't a blogger. It wasn't a burner account. It wasn't a retired player hinting from the sidelines. According to late-night chatter that spread faster than anyone could contain it, a powerful league-connected figure, someone whose calls still get answered immediately, had allegedly weighed in behind the scenes. Not publicly, quietly, the kind of influence that doesn't need a press conference. And that's when the story crossed a dangerous line. Because now, the backlash wasn't just emotional, it was structural. Fans weren't just angry anymore, they were suspicious. If voices like that were shaping draft outcomes indirectly, then what exactly was a draft? A competition or a performance? The league tried to reframe the narrative fast. Analysts shifted tone. Headlines softened. Suddenly, it was all about long-term development and fit over flash. But the audience wasn't buying it. Not this time. Not after everything they'd watched unfold in real time. And in the middle of it all stood Shedeur Sanders, calm on the outside, but clearly carrying the weight of a moment that had turned into a referendum on the league itself. Sources close to the situation claimed Shedeur kept things internal. No rants, no emotional interviews, no social media explosions, just silence. And that silence, it hit harder than any tweet ever could. Because when someone refuses to perform outrage, people lean in closer. Fans began reading body language, replaying footage, slowing down clips of draft night reactions. Some said they saw a disappointment. Others saw resolve. But everyone agreed on one thing. Something had been taken from him that night. Something intangible, but powerful. Meanwhile, the owners tried to fade back into the background. Some franchises issued vague statements about confidence in our evaluations. Others hid behind general managers. A few owners never spoke at all, and that absence became part of the story. Because when outrage is league-wide, silence feels like guilt, even if it isn't. Behind closed doors, speculation ran wild. Would there be internal reviews? Quiet apologies? A reshuffling of who really calls the shots on draft night? No one knew, and that uncertainty only fueled the fire. Then came the emotional turn. Former players spoke directly to Shedeur through podcasts and interviews, offering support without naming names. "Use it," one said. "They always give you a reason." Another added, "The league remembers, even when pretends it doesn't." Fans started reframing the story, not as a loss, but as a setup for a comeback, for motivation, for the kind of narrative the NFL can't script or suppress. And that's when the tone shifted from anger to anticipation, because nothing scares a system more than someone who survives it. At the same time, the mental toll became part of the conversation. Commentators asked what this kind of scrutiny does to a young athlete, to be dissected, doubted, and debated not for performance, but for perception. Some called it unfair. Others called it the price of fame. But a growing number called it unnecessary. And still, no official explanation came. The league moved forward. Games were played. New storylines emerged. But this one didn't die. It lingered in comment sections, in late-night debates, in every conversation about fairness, power, and who really decides futures in professional sports. Then came the quiet revenge, not loud, not messy, but effective. Shedeur showed up, to camps, to practices, to interviews, focused, controlled, ready. Every throw became a statement, every success a reminder, and slowly the narrative began to crack. Because nothing undermines doubt like consistency. Fans noticed, analysts adjusted. The same voices that once questioned him started hedging their words. Maybe we underestimated. He's handling this well. The tone softened, but the memory didn't fade. As for the owners, the outrage didn't topple them. Power rarely collapses overnight, but it left a mark, a visible crack in the illusion of neutrality, a reminder that fans are watching closer than ever. And that might be the real fallout, because once people start questioning the fairness of the system, every decision gets examined, every silence feels louder, every explanation sounds rehearsed. The draft, once celebrated as pure opportunity, now carries a shadow of doubt it didn't have before. The story ends quietly, but not cleanly. No resignations, no press conference confessions, no dramatic league overhaul. Just a young quarterback moving forward and a lead pretending nothing happened. But the internet doesn't forget. Fans don't forget. And moments like this don't disappear. They wait. They resurface. They become reference points the next time a name slides unexpectedly. The next time fit replaces talent. The next time confidence gets labeled a problem. Shedeur didn't vanish. He didn't collapse. He didn't apologize for who he was. He kept going. And while the league moved on, the question stayed behind, unanswered, uncomfortable, and impossible to ignore. Because he may have walked away from draft night quietly, but the secret stayed. So now the question isn't just about Shedeur Sanders anymore. It's about you. Because what we just watched wasn't only a draft moment. It was a mirror showing how power really works when the cameras turn off, how narratives get shaped, how silence can be louder than explanations, and how talent doesn't always move the needle the way we're told it does. Some people will say this is all coincidence. Others will say this is just how the league works. But let's be real. When the same patterns keep showing up, year after year, name after name, at what point do we stop calling it bad luck? Was this really about football, or was it about control? About comfort? About who gets to speak loudly and who's expected to stay quiet? Because if you were in that position, same work ethic, same spotlight, same pressure, and you felt the system quietly closing doors instead of opening them, what would you do next? Would you stay silent? Would you fight back? Or would you let your game do the talking and force them to look again? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation doesn't end here, not even close. Hit that like button if you believe the draft should be about talent, not narratives. And subscribe to Spill News, because stories like this don't disappear, they evolve. We're watching, we're remembering. And trust me, this story is far from over. Stay locked in.